Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. Carrying on with the season preview series today, this is the final episode and is featuring the defending Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. Now for those of you who haven't watched any of the previous episodes, I'll be going through my projected offensive and defensive starters. However, ignore the graphic for one of those defensive starters for the Patriots, as he was released over the weekend, so my bad there. Going through them. Outside of that one, which clearly not so accurate, I do suspect the list should be reasonably so, especially as we are getting rather close to the beginning of the regular season. I'll then be going through the schedule, highlighting what I believe are some of the key areas on the schedule. So if this team is going to make a return to the playoffs and win the AFC East for the umpteenth time, then there's a couple of stretches that I think will be more important, so I'll be focusing on those before going through what I believe are the key areas that this team is going to need to have perform either at the standard expected or above and beyond in order to have a decent chance at repeating. They got a pretty good chance. This roster is pretty good. I don't feel that's too much of a spoiler for what's ahead. So, starting with the offensive starters at quarterback, of course, Tom Brady, coming back for his 40-year-old season. So, what is there to say about the guy? He's not the deep thrower he once was. I don't think he's got the biggest... He never had the biggest arm. You can see he's lost a little bit of that, as you can with Breeze, some of those other guys. It's expected at this age. But what he always has been, and has particularly, if anything, got better at with age, is reading matchups, exploiting stuff that he's seen on film, and at the minute he might be the best sort of West Coast dinky dunk style quarterback the league has ever seen. He really does just pick teams apart. At times it's like watching someone just spam drag routes on Madden, and it's not quite the most fascinating style of quarterbacking to watch, but boy is it effective, particularly with the diverse sort of group of weapons that they've assembled around him. And really it's a testament to how these guys build the roster that he's able to succeed without too many big names outside of really Gronkowski. The running back position is a bit of a strange one. A whole lot of names, not a whole lot of star power. I think Dion Lewis is probably the favourite to start. He looked incredible a couple of years ago before getting injured, and I think if he can be 90% of that player, I think he's the most talented guy there. He's got the versatility that this team looks for. He can run inside, he can run outside. He's got, showed incredible elusiveness during that spell, and he's a weapon in the passing game, which is essential to what this team does. If you want to be on the field all the time, you blunt probably the exception to the rule the last couple of years. And James White, who was probably the MVP, you could argue, of the Super Bowl, he was essential to that victory. Not just because he got the game-winning touchdown. His receiving numbers were a bit bonkers in that game. He fits much like Dion Lewis. He's a versatile guy, probably not as good as a runner, but as we saw in that game, capable of taking passes out of the backfield, making one or two defenders miss and picking up yardage that way. For that reason, I think he's got a good chance of being a third down back for this team, and just sprinkled in here and there. Of course, there's other guys, Rex Burkhead, Gillisley on this roster. It's bordering on impossible to predict who they're going to go with. They don't, it's like Fort Knox. They're in New England. They don't let out too much information. The wide receiver group, been a change here as well since when these graphics were initially done. The reason I had Edelman listed third is because I think Brandon Cooks and Malcolm Mitchell are the two outside receivers effectively. Now, they will move about the formation. That's just how the Patriots roll. Cooks acquired in the trade, of course, probably the most talented receiver they've had from a physical skill set standpoint in possibly since Randy Moss. It's been a while since they've had a true sort of burner on the team with football skills. So expect him to be dangerous for this team. Certainly should be an effective decoy in terms of taking the top off the defence, especially with the amount of underneath weapons this team has. So I expect him to be used creatively and effectively by this team. He'll get a lot of yards after the catch, I've got no doubt about that. And Malcolm Mitchell, he'll fill the role of the big receiver on the outside. He's not been the most consistent player for them, but he showed signs of improvement at times last year. I think for that reason he'll get the start. And then unfortunately this weekend Julian Edelman was lost for the season. So essentially just replace him with Chris Hogan. He'll do a similar job, moving about the formation, being a prototypical slot guy, that same role that Wes Welker initially made famous there in New England, catching a lot of those sort of in-out options, drags, slants, like the shallow crossers, that kind of thing. Probably not as talented a player as Edelman, but I don't think there's a huge drop-off, and he'll be able to fulfill that role effectively for them. He played particularly well down the stretch for this team last year. Another off-season with the team, I'd imagine, could only benefit. And moving on to the tight end spot, Gronk is back. Assuming he stays healthy, he's the best tight end I've seen play this sport. So, yeah, not much to say there. He can do everything. He's a physical mismatch for anybody. He can really run. He's got the power to just nuke guys in the open field. Can outrun guys. He's just too big. And he's a superb blocker. He's just an absolute monster. There's not really a huge amount to say about it. And Dwayne Allen, who's a very talented tight end who I think has frankly just underachieved the last couple of seasons with the Colts. They gave him money, he let them down. He has been a bit injury prone, but I think he's a very talented receiver, and he can also block a little bit. So don't be surprised if he has a bit of a mini renaissance, particularly if Gronkowski does get injured again. If Gronkowski does have one weakness, it is that he has had a rather injury-plagued few seasons, career, to be fair. So Allen could end up being an important part of this starting lineup. Moving on to the offensive line, we've got Nate Solder and Marcus Cannon as the tackles. Cannon really impressed last year, having not been particularly... he was okay at guard. Turns out probably a better tackle than guard, so he was fine. Solder is solid in pass protection. I don't think he offers too much in the run game. I don't think he's particularly athletic. He doesn't make a huge amount of mistakes in terms of matchups or alignment, but he can be overpowered, and he's not got the quickness, particularly as he started to get older, to be great on the blind side. However, this team, you really don't have to be able to pass protect. Well, you don't need to pass protect for very long, very often. It is a very much short passing game. They're a solid, if unspectacular, pair. The guard position, they've got Joe Fooney and Shaq Mason, I suspect, will be the two starters. I wouldn't be shocked to see some changes potentially on the interior. His team does prefer to be fairly stable there, but I don't think they're a particularly talented pair. But again, as I said, the emphasis is on getting the ball out quickly in this scheme. And at centre, David Andrews, who I think's probably the most talented of these interior linemen, probably the second best of this team's linemen. Looking forward to seeing if he can continue to improve. I thought he played quite well at times. And at kicker, one of the most reliable kickers in the league in Stephen Gostkowski. So this offense, they're going to be dangerous. It's simply based on Tom Brady. That it's been a long time since they weren't. So expect them to be one of the more effective passing attacks. Not necessarily hugely explosive, but they'll wear teams out. There'll be a variety of guys getting the ball. I wouldn't be shocked if this team doesn't necessarily have a 1,000-yard receiver. I wouldn't be shocked to see like Brandon Cooks top out at around 900 and just have a whole bunch of dudes with 700, a bunch of running backs with about 200 to 300. They're just kind of built that way. It makes them incredibly difficult to game plan for. But you don't know who's going to be getting the ball on any given week. The run game is a bit of a question mark. Last year it was a very much a power type scheme. They don't necessarily have the guys to do that this year. They're a more versatile and elusive bunch. I'm not sure how the run blocking will allow that based on what they were trying to do last year. But as long as Tom Brady's there, they're a dangerous group. If Gronkowski is healthy, then they become incredibly dangerous because there's so many weapons. Gronk is the primary one that you have to stop, and if he's there and he's dominating, then I think it's going to really open things up for what is a pretty talented group of receivers, and they're certainly all in sync with Brady for the most part. So it's going to be, I think they'll be a very good offense. I'm not sure they'll be one of the highest scoring in the league, but they'll be plenty effective. I think they're going to do a very good job of controlling the clock against a lot of teams as well. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball, as I said, Coney Ely, that's not going to happen. So we've got Trey Flowers. I am not sure who's necessarily going to line up there at end now. Of course, they had the rookie Derek Rivers, who I'd be pretty confident in starting at this point, were it not for the ACL tear that he suffered. I thought Ely was basically there by default because he really didn't impress me other than that Super Bowl performance. Did very little in Carolina. So we'll see who they end up going with. I wouldn't be shocked to see this team go out and acquire somebody else. So that spot is certainly wide open. The defensive tackle spot, pretty good pair. Malcolm Brown and Alan Branch, both really good run players. Big physical pluggers. Team could definitely benefit from getting an under tackle type player who can generate some rush there. But they prioritise stopping the run in New England. It's been the case for a while, and these two are two of the best at that. Especially Branch was very, very good last season in that regard. The outside backer spot, I think, for experience sake, Belichick's scheme is one of the most challenging, I think, for a linebacker. He does ask for a lot from them, have to do a little bit of everything. I think David Harris can do that. He's been around the league for a long time now. Played some multiple schemes whilst he was there in New York, so I think he'll get one of the outside spots. I think Carl Van Noy will certainly have, not a given that he starts. I think Harris is highly likely. But again, he's an experienced player. I think he'll be able to pick things up better than some of the younger guys. So I think he'll probably get the start early in the season. Whether that remains the case, I'm not sure. And the middle linebacker, Donta Hightower, who's a very good, smart player. Not the most athletic, but he plays the run incredibly well. He plays the pass well within his limitations. He's not ever going to be a great coverage guy. He's just not quite got the quickness or speed to do so. But we saw the importance of him last season, especially during the Super Bowl, where he really did help turn that game around. You could see he was the guy keeping those guys on track. Didn't lose his head at all and ended up making a huge play. He's the prototypical Patriot inside backer. So yeah, he's no doubt going to be the starter there. The cornerback position looking pretty strong this year. Malcolm Butler's a fine player. Seems to be somewhat overrated. It sounds odd to say, but because I think that play in the Super Bowl really kind of just kept him in the spotlight. Now, don't get me wrong, he has played very, very well since becoming a full-time starter, but I don't think he's one of the absolute elite corners in the league. However, he's got Stephon Gilmore on the other side, and he's certainly not one of them. He's got the talent to be. He's a more talented player than Butler, in my opinion. Butler is a great zone corner who does a good enough job playing man because of his toughness, his smarts, and his willingness. But he's not a great physical talent. Gilmore is, but Gilmore has the opposite problem where he's far more unreliable. He was a bit of a liability at times last year in Buffalo, where it really didn't look like he was the most interested of corners in the league, I think would be a nice way of putting it. He can play man, and I expect him to be used as the ace in this defensive backfield. We saw last year, Belichick knows Butler's fairly limited when it comes to taking on the true freaks at the position. and he tended to get a bit of help. Gilmore will maybe get a bit less so, and I think he'll take those guys due to his talents. He's a better press corner, can play the man stuff, and if he's motivated, he's a really good player. A couple of years ago, he was great for Buffalo. So if he can turn it around, think of it like an Aqib Talib situation, then this pairing could be really good. And I think Eric Rowe maybe ends up in the Logan Ryan role in the slot for this team. I think that spot's going to be wide open. Again, this is a team that values smarts and versatility. And we'll see who manages to get that job in the end. And then we've got the safety position. Devin McCourty and Patrick Chung will be returning. McCourty's a very, very smart player. Kind of like the Malcolm Butler of a secondary. Not the most physically talented, but he's always in the right spots. Doesn't make a lot of mistakes and keeps this group well disciplined and organised. Not the most physical tackler either, but he's got good technique. He really, considering he was a corner initially, has done a great job adapting to that position. Patrick Chung, probably not the best safety in the world, but they can play him in the box. He can move about underneath the free safety role and gives them some options. I wouldn't be shocked if there was someone they were really impressed with to see them maybe get the job from him, but for now I think he's an average, below average starter at best, but he's got the job at this point. And the punter, Ryan Allen. This group is, and has been for the last few years in particular, a testament to how good Belichick is at his job. They've got Matt Patricia there as well, but Belichick, of course, does have, I'm sure, a very big say in how this team operates defensively. That is his bread and butter. They're not the most talented group, but they are certainly effective. You always hear it, and it is very much true that they tend to focus on one aspect of what the other team does well, whether that's a certain player or a few plays. If it's running to a certain side, running certain types of powers, they tend to adapt a game plan specifically to attack it. They do a great job. They are slightly undermanned, I think, compared to some of the better teams, especially when you look at some of the defensive rankings. There are certainly more talented groups than them. The pass rush has been an issue for a while. I don't see that changing this year. The secondary is strong, but I'm not a big fan of this front seven. Beyond the run stuff in prowess and the defensive tackles. So again, I don't think too highly of them. I think the secondary is certainly good. I don't think too highly of them on paper. I think they'll probably end up being a top 10 unit once again, because they're not going to have to be on the field as long as certain other teams. They'll be playing with a lead, and they've got the best mind in the business leading them. So yeah, they're going to be a good bunch. I'm confident in that, even if they don't necessarily look it. This year, the Patriots' schedule looks very, very reasonable. This has led to a fair bit of talk that this team could potentially go 16-0. Outside of the AFC games they've got don't look too challenging. The East, especially with the injuries the Dolphins have, I don't see anyone being particularly threatening to them. The NFC South and the AFC West are both good divisions, but all the teams in them have their flaws. I think the first few games are probably the most challenging. Got the Chiefs, that's not going to be easy. They're a very good team. The Saints, the Saints can put points on anyone. The Texans defensively are very good. They're a bit of an unknown quantity, at this point with regards to the offense. The Panthers are a bit of a wild card, this team, this year. And then they've got the Buccaneers. That's not a particularly brutal stretch. It might be the toughest they've got. Maybe the Falcons, followed by the Chargers with the bye, then the Broncos and Raiders. But even then, so the West is tough. The NFC South is pretty tough, but they're all teams with some degree of flaws. I think, especially the NFC South, they just kind of match up well with the Patriots, or on the Patriots' behalf, because the Patriots are very good secondary. Some pretty good passing teams in the South. The West may be a bit more of an issue, but I don't know. I just see couple of flaws in those teams. I just don't think the Chiefs are explosive enough to deal with this team. The Chargers' injuries have just sapped them. The Raiders, I don't think they're good enough defensively. I think this team's going to have a pretty comfortable route to the playoffs, particularly with the Dolphins having suffered so many injuries. I've got them going 13-3 this year after last year's 14-2 record. I do think they'll drop a couple of games, but I think they'll comfortably make the AFC East theirs again, and they'll be battling it out with the Steelers for the number 1 seed. However, for that to once again be the case, because God knows how many times this team's had a bye, there's going to be 3 things that I'll be keeping an eye on just to make sure these things occur and that they've got a good chance of repeating. The first one being Brady's arm. He is 40 at the end of the day. We didn't see a huge amount last year from him to suggest his arm's massively declined. Doesn't throw the ball deep down the sidelines too much anymore. I think that's slightly telling. But as long as he can do what he does over the middle of the field, they're still going to be the offense will still be functional. I worry that perhaps when you play some of the very good teams, such as the defensive teams like the Broncos, the Chiefs, it could be an issue that if they can sort of pinpoint that he's struggling to do those things. I'm not saying that his arm has fell off yet to this point, but it certainly can. It can happen very, very quickly. We saw that with Brett Favre that last season. Peyton's arm fell off. You'd seen it on the decline, and then it just totally went that final season. If there's one guy who prepares like nobody else, and he's been fortunate as well to have not sustained any major injuries to his throwing arm, it's Brady. But if it does decline, then of course this team becomes a very different proposition, even with Garoppolo having looked very good in his limited time. The pass rush, this has been a problem for a couple of years. Getting rid of Chandler Jones certainly didn't help, although I don't think he ever really lived up to his potential there in New England. They've had to manufacture rush. They haven't had a dominant edge rusher for a while. The interior, there's not anyone great there. It's all well and good having a secondary that looks as effective as theirs, but if they're not able to generate enough of a rush, I think it could really cause them problems, particularly when you're looking at playing teams like the Raiders and the Steelers in the playoffs, who look like they're going to be very explosive on that side of the ball. I think they need to have somebody step up to get this group going. I mean, Flowers showed some things last year, but even if he improves on that, maybe becomes a double-digit sack guy, they're going to need help from somewhere else. I don't think they can rely on just blitzing. And the offensive line, they stayed pretty healthy last year, having had some bad luck previously. As I say, I don't think they're the most talented bunch, but I think they have good chemistry, good understanding. You lose one or two guys, that can all fall apart. Particularly the interior. As I say, this team does not throw down the field very much. You don't necessarily have to protect Brady for very long before the ball is out of his hands. So I think the interior of the line is absolutely vital, particularly with regards to, as I say, what's going to be a bit of a shift in the run game. So I think they're going to have to stay healthy. I'm not sure about their depth too much, and continuity is absolutely vital, particularly in with Brady being a guy who really does a lot of stuff at the line of scrimmage. Keeping the communication effective is absolutely essential. So if they can stay healthy, keep Brady on his feet for the 2 to 3 seconds he usually needs, then this team should be okay. I think if they really struggle in that regard, I would be worried about this offense. So there you have it. There's your defending champ Patriots once again, looking like a very good team. They'll be there or thereabouts at the end of the season. Got no doubt about that. Which seems a bit boring at this point, but that's just how it is. Brady and Belichick, I'm not betting against them. So, as always, what are your guys' views? Is this the year you think the Patriots finally start to slow down? Is Brady's age going to be that much of a concern? Let me know, whether it's the comment section below, Cover Zero Facebook page. Find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Always happy to talk football, as you guys should well know. And check out some more episodes. This is the finale of this rather grueling series to do. It's been fun, but with all the pre-season games, I've been trying to keep up with them. It's been a lot of work, and I hope you guys have enjoyed them as much as I have enjoyed doing them. So check the rest of those out if you've enjoyed this. It'd be greatly appreciated. As always, if you could like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon. That's also thoroughly appreciated. Really do appreciate people checking the show out. Thank you so much for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. Have a great evening and go Bucks.